The samurai warrior is perhaps the most enduring and recognizable symbol of Japan. Though associated with bravery, self-sacrifice, and swordsmanship, this picture is based on myth and is incomplete.
The samurai emerged as a warrior class during a period of intense conflict, but their roles varied greatly over the next 1,000 years. They were tax collectors, poets, firefighters and diplomats, and so much more.
Even as a process of modernization saw the samurai fade into myth, their image has been manipulated, idealized, and adapted, and has continued to inspire cultural creativity right up until the present day.
The first section of the exhibition explores the rise of the samurai when they emerged as mercenary warriors and secured their political authority through warfare on battlefields and exchanges of culture in private audiences. Although most people think that samurai were always wielding swords on the battlefield, they actually began as mounted archers. In this hand scroll here, you can see the intensity and brutality of warfare and the amount of arrows that have been shot in this bloody battle. One of the things that the samurai is remembered for are their suits of armour that have become an iconic symbol of Japan. Here we see an early suit of armour called an oyuroi that was designed to accommodate mounted archery. Looking closer at this armour, you can see that there are these large shoulder guards. These were designed to act as shields whilst on horseback, so that it could protect the rider from oncoming volleys of arrows. At the base of this armour, there are 4 plates, which are called tassets, and these would protect the legs of the rider as they went into battle. These large tassets are quite cumbersome and would have only been suitable for limited movement, which is why they were perfect for mounted archery when you're sat on your horse. Though swords were rarely used in battle at this time, they were still carried into war as status symbols. Early swords, known as tachi, were long and elegant blades. These early swords, like this tachi blade here, required tremendous skill to be forged. As you can see on this example, these blades are admired for their crystalline pattern that is presented on the hamon, which is the consequence of the many folds that are required to forge such a sword. These swords were often presented in beautifully decorated mounts, such as the one here. These long-tail birds decorate a mount that was designed to be used at court, where these swords would have emphasized the prestige of the wearer. After a period of relative peace, warfare increased during the 1300s. As the conflicts intensified, there was a rise of hand-to-hand combat, and this changed the style of armour. As you can see here in this armour, with glittering gold lacquer and beautiful blue textile, there's a greater number of tassets to allow a lower body movement, facilitating hand-to-hand combat. This style of armour is called a haramaki and closes at the back. In the exhibition, we also present a dormado to show the development of armour. This armour closes at the side and would allow the wearer to put it on by themselves. This development highlights that there were different ranks of samurai, some that would have had attendants to help put their armour on, and others where they would have had to put it on by themselves. The shorter bladed katana developed during this period, as it was much more suited to hand combat. If you'd like to know more about these swords, then check out this Curators Corner video, which explores the development of Japanese swords over 1,000 years. The introduction of gunpowder into Japan from the Europeans created a new development in military technology. This can be seen here in this armour that has a metal breastplate. Although it would have added extra weight, it was designed to be effective against bullets being fired from matchlock weaponry. Though warfare dominated this period, warriors aspired to the sophistication and legitimacy of the imperial court, and the high-stakes meetings between powerful warlords were organised around cultural events such as no theatre and formal tea practices. An important aspect of these tea gatherings was to show one's cultural refinement. In the tea room, there was an alcove where a hanging scroll would hang, such as this one here by Sesshu. Alongside this, the utensils used in the preparation were often valued and given names. These formal tea gatherings allowed for allegiances to be made, but it wasn't the only aspect of diplomacy that the samurai engaged in. There was an international element to samurai diplomacy. This Christian samurai, Hasakura Tsunenaga, travelled to the Vatican in 1613 to negotiate for a trade deal between Japan and Europe. Hasakura had an impact in the Vatican and can be seen in a fresco there and in this painting that was commissioned by Pope Paul V.
After decades of competing warlords attempting to consolidate their power, Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged victorious in 1600 and eliminated his final rival in 1615. He established a military government known as a shogunate, which unified Japan and delivered a lasting peace for the first time in hundreds of years. The samurai class made up 10% of society, and half of those households were comprised of women, and the households also included children, boys and girls. With no more battles to fight, the role of samurai men narrowed, and they served as government functionaries. Hokusai, in one of his last sheet prints, shows a fascinating scene of land surveyors out in the landscape. This was one of the official roles for men of the samurai class and required significant education. The print celebrates the graduation of two young samurai men as mathematicians, and they would have used this high level of education, using rulers and theodolites. In this time of peace, armour was hardly ever worn. The typical appearance of a samurai man would have been in this business suit, known as a kamishimo. It comprises a sleeveless jacket and wide pleated trousers made of starched hemp, and it's worn over a soft silk robe, known as a noshime. All of these elements would have been decorated with the family crest. This example has the crest of the ruling family of Tsushima domain, the island lying between Japan's southernmost island and Korea. As had always been the case, men and women of the samurai class were expected to be accomplished in the arts. This wonderful painting shows us that the love of cats was shared in Japan too. It was painted by the wife of the daimyo of Fukui province, and recent research has revealed her name. She was Sadahime, granddaughter of the shogun, and she married the daimyo of Fukui in a political alliance. She was accomplished at painting and poetry, and she depicts this beautiful scene of a cat sleeping beneath a gorgeous peony bush. The Tokugawa shogunate based themselves in Edo. This was a huge city where most of the buildings were constructed of wood. Both samurai and townspeople created companies of firefighters to tackle the fires when they emerged. Within the women's quarters of Edo Castle, where no men were allowed to enter, the women themselves had to perform firefighting duties. This jacket and hood, one of the stars of the show, was a ceremonial outfit for the head of this women's firefighting company. It's made of red wool with extremely elaborate embroidery depicting water and grappling hooks that would have been used to bring down buildings to create fire breaks. The sophistication of the jacket and hood suggests the prestige of the wearer, and this outfit would have been worn at ceremonies where she demonstrated her status within the company. Given the popular perception of samurai, it may come as a surprise to some visitors that samurai played these roles, and samurai women as well. Even though there were no longer battles, or perhaps particularly because it was a time of peace, both samurai households and townspeople eagerly consumed images of legendary warriors for both entertainment and education. This spectacular painting shows the legendary archer Minamoto no Tametomo, who was involved in the civil war of the 1150s. When his side was defeated, he was exiled to the Isle of Demons, and we see him here seated on the shore, challenging 3 young demons to try to flex his bow, and we can see that they're really not managing it. The painting was commissioned by a publisher to celebrate the completion of a serialized novel in 1819, which had been extremely successful. The subject of the novel was Tametomo, and so Hokusai chose this scene from the first volume of the book. These legends concerned heroines as well as heroes. Here we see Tokiwa Gozen struggling through the snow with her 3 children. Their father has been defeated in one of the battles of the Civil War, and she is forced to flee. In an act of superhuman endurance, she struggles through the snow, trying to find shelter for her and her children, and eventually a kindly couple take pity on them. For this, she is celebrated as one of the key figures of the civil wars of the 1100s.
For 200 years, Japan had maintained its security by limiting its trading relationships to China and, to a lesser extent, the Netherlands. However, in July 1853, American ships entered into Edo Bay demanding trade and contact. There was intense disagreement about how to proceed, and the formations of factions led to open battle returning once again. These turbulent events were often expressed in print. However, there was a ban on depictions of contemporary events. It was feared that depicting challenges to the state would inspire further resistance. To circumvent this ban, print artists used satirical and imaginative compositions. This can be seen in this print here by Kawanabe Kyosai, who depicts a great frog battle. This alludes to a real punitive expedition executed by the shogunate against a rebellious domain. In the top left corner of this print, you can see a group of frogs that represent the forces of the rebellious Choshu domain, who are being bombarded by water cannons that are being fired by other frogs who represent the forces of the Tokugawa shogunate. However, even through these coded messages, it still fell foul of censorship. If you can see here, there is a lotus leaf that has a motif on it, and it was thought that this resembled too closely the crest of the ruling Tokugawa family. With growing disagreement about how the threat of these external powers should be handled, the samurai picked up their weapons again, including firearms. This example here really embodies the inversion of the famous phrase, where you can bring a gun to a knife fight. This pistol has been disguised in the form of a dagger. Pulling the iron ring cocks the mechanism, and pressing the button where the manuki should be fires it. And thus you can always be the victor at your knife fight.
With the fall of the Tokugawa shogunate came the Meiji Restoration of 1868, which established a new government, still formed of samurai. Japan was repositioned as a constitutional monarchy and embarked on a program of modernization. The former samurai lost their government stipends and their right to bear arms, as a conscript army was now created. In the early years of modernization, the image of the samurai was rejected as obsolete and old-fashioned. But by the 1890s, a nostalgia for a disappeared world was emerging, and the samurai image returned as a useful symbol, harnessed in support for a nationalist and imperialist agenda. This can be seen clearly in this commemorative plate and banknote, which bear the image of a statue of the medieval warrior Kusunoki Masashige, revered as an imperial loyalist in the 1330s. The plate was an Imperial Navy award in 1939, and the areas of red on the map show Japan's colonial expansion into Korea and Taiwan. The banknote similarly shows an image of this equestrian statue that still stands today outside the Imperial Palace in Tokyo. In the 1890s, various thinkers in Japan were developing the ideal of Bushido. This concept of Bushido was introduced to the West in this book by Nitobe Inazo, which was published in 1899. This book popularized the idea of the noble self-sacrificing warrior that is still widely known today. In December 1941, Japan joined the global conflict of World War II. The curved samurai sword had reappeared in the 1930s and was used by the soldiers who were propagating Japan's war on the continent. This is an heirloom 15th century blade that was carried by the General Itagaki Seishiro. The swords that were carried by Japanese troops had been such an important symbol, and thus it became essential for them to be surrendered to the Allied forces.
In the post-war period, the idea of the samurai gained traction. From books to TV, movies to video games, samurai now permeate pop culture, having an iconic status internationally. In this exhibition, we have several examples of contemporary art, manga, anime, and fashion, some of which have been made especially for this exhibition. This includes a sculpture and a painting by the Japanese artist Noguchi Tetsuya. In Duck and Man, we can see a lifelike samurai sitting upon a rubber duck. This not only riffs on the British Museum's best-selling object in the shop, the rubber duck, but also explores the universality of being part of a civil, bureaucratic, administrative class, the antidote of which may be a bit of fun, like riding on a rubber duck. Another important aspect of this exhibition is fashion, where we explore how designers from around the world have been inspired by historic garments and transposed elements of samurai style into modern outfits. This example here is designed by the artistic director of Lanvin, Peter Copping, especially for this exhibition. It reflects aspects of the narrative that you've heard today. Though the garment might look like it's inspired by Armour, look closer and you'll see that the embroidery is based around paperclips, hinting at the samurai's role as an administrator. At the end of the exhibition, you'll be immersed in an incredible show of film, TV, anime, video games, and manga. These displays are designed to show you the types of media that are popular today that reflect on the samurai image. We hope they will inspire a new generation of creativity, ones that incorporate the nuances of the exhibition itself.
Thank you for joining us on this tour of the Samurai exhibition. The objects we've shown you today give just a glimpse of the comprehensive exploration of the history of the samurai and the evolution of their image across the centuries.
If you would like to see the rest of this gathering of tremendous objects, then please come to the exhibition, which is open until the 4th of May.